Established in 2005, the Syrian American Council is a grassroots advocacy organization devoted to advancing the cause of a free and democratic Syria. In March 2011, Syrian Americans watched in earnest as the people of Daraa joined in peaceful protests to secure the release of children arrested for painting the popular Arab Spring slogan, "The people demand the end of the regime." Protesters chanted, "Peaceful, peaceful," carried olive branches, and unbuttoned their shirts to show they were unarmed. Despite this, the regime responded with brutality, firing live ammunition at men, women, and children in broad daylight. In just 10 days, 200 of Daraa's innocent lay dead. Daraa had shown the way for the rest of Syria as protesters took to the streets of Deir ez-Zor, Banyas, Latakia, Idlib, Tartus, and Homs. Daraa's bravery had shown the way forward for the Syrian American community. In May 2011, SAC organized the largest ever Syrian American rally in Washington, D.C., which saw over 1,000 Syrian Americans march to the Syrian embassy and demand the immediate resignation of Syria's ambassador to the United States. In a historic press conference following the march, SAC Chairman Luay Safi remembered the 887 Syrian protesters murdered by the Syrian regime and announced to the world that Syrian Americans would unite to bring the regime to justice. SAC members sprung into action by welcoming people of all faiths, ethnicities, and persuasions to establish over 20 SAC chapters across the country. From Indianapolis to Los Angeles, chapters built relationships with elected officials, hosted town hall meetings, coordinated fundraisers that have raised millions of dollars for humanitarian relief organizations, and drove thousands to public protests against the Assad regime. In May 2012, SAC stepped into the national political arena by opening an office in Washington, D.C. Soon afterwards, SAC welcomed Mohammed Ala Ghanem to head the new office as SAC's Director of Government Relations. Serving alongside him is Yisr Bitar, Government Relations Assistant, Jason Hunt, Government Relations Policy Fellow, Rashad Al-Dabbagh, the Director of Communications, and Sami Harmouche, the National Project Manager. SAC's dynamic young staff is led by Hussam Ayloush, National Chairman, Mirna Bark, National Vice President, and Dr. Talal Sanbouli, National President. With the dedicated input of SAC's democratically elected Board of Directors, advocacy is coordinated on all fronts to ensure that the voice of the Syrian people is heard. The SAC Government Relations team in Washington, D.C. has met with more than 100 elected officials, as well as regular meetings with the State Department and embassies of key nations. SAC staff has testified at congressional hearings on Syria, addressed prominent foreign policy think tanks, and published policy briefs to educate lawmakers. In the run-up to the 2012 presidential election, SAC provided both campaigns with up-to-the-minute analysis of events on the ground in Syria, as well as tailored policy recommendations. Reminding government officials and the public of the cost of inaction in Syria, SAC's Save Syrian Children ad campaign ran in over 40 metro stations in Washington, D.C. and captured the attention of thousands of commuters. Recently, SAC's Washington, D.C. staff coordinated the National Advocacy Day for Syria, which saw over 70 Syrian Americans travel to Washington, D.C. and personally lobby the representatives in the House and Senate. SAC is proud to coordinate with other Syrian American organizations through the Coalition for a Democratic Syria. The SAC Sister City program illustrates how Syrian American communities work together to make a difference on the ground in Syria. Last year, SAC Chicago partnered with Aleppo and raised over $450,000, from which they contribute monthly to support public safety through the Aleppo Civilian Administration Council. Other chapters, such as SAC Northern California, partnered with the city of Abu Kamal and the Karam Foundation to build flour mills to feed the city's residents. Putting young people in a position to make a difference is a key element of SAC's vision. Over 24 Syrian American college students have participated in the SAC Youth Trip to Syria. Raising aid from their communities and friends online, Syrian American college students have hand-delivered over $150,000 in aid to cities inside Syria. Returning to the U.S., participants have become important advocates for the Syrian people, speaking at events, developing new campaigns, and taking their stories to media outlets nationwide. Giving experts easier access to projects on the ground, SAC developed Professionals for Syria Tomorrow, an online platform that promises to play an important role for years to come. SAC's public relations team partners with volunteers interfacing with local and national media outlets by issuing timely press releases and media advisories, facilitating the publication of member-prepared op-ed articles, and drive social media campaigns to raise awareness. The Syrian American community must invest in advocacy work today in order to prepare for the needs of the Syrian people when the Assad regime falls, to be able to give Syria's children a future. Only with a powerful voice in Washington, D.C. can Syrian Americans secure the aid and goodwill that will be necessary to return millions of displaced Syrians back to their homes and rebuild Syria's infrastructure for future generations. Syrian Americans from across the country are joining hands as SAC members to advance the interests of the Syrian people. Take a stand for all Syrians by becoming a SAC member today. Together, we will make a difference.